We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. We have an enemy who tries to convince us of things that are untrue. Our enemy makes statements that are untrue about ourselves, untrue about our world, and untrue about our God. In this series, we will address these lies and focus on how to train our thinking to know the truth.
Hi everyone. So this weekend Rose spoke about what it looks like to have a mindset of authenticity instead of a fake mindset or instead of wearing a mask. She just spoke a lot on what it's just like to be real and to be who God created you to be. So she took the points from Ephesians 4 verses 20 to 25, and I'm just going to read a couple of those verses just to refresh your memory. So verse 22 says, "You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body." I love this scripture. So the lie that she brought out in that most people often believe is that if people knew the real me, they wouldn't like me. This is definitely something that I have worked through. I like people to be impressed by me. I like people to think that maybe I'm close to perfect. The reality is I'm not. And that's not me being real. But something the Lord has highlighted to me is that it's just so much better to just be me instead of the fake me or me with a mask. That's been several years that the Lord's taken me through that journey, actually. And then the truth that Rose pulled out of this is that I am deeply loved by God. This is so beautiful. It's so important that we are walking in the fact that we are loved by God. And then when we do that, when we realize how deeply and truly loved we are by God just because of who we are, then we can be who we are. We can be real and we can share ourselves and the real us with other people. So 2 action steps that Rose brought up. The first one was to come against this lie. We can take on a new way of life. Part of this is we can choose to take on the character of God. Actually, Rose said we need to choose to take on the character of God. And I think that's so important. One thing she said, and I wrote it down, true holiness is a life pleasing to God on all levels possible. I love that. It's so important that we are striving to be holy, striving to be righteous, and living just solely for God. And then the second point that Rose said was to be vulnerable. This is another way we can come against that lie, to be vulnerable. She said, when you start being authentically you begin to become who God created you to be. God created us to be real. And so when we come in and we're not real, then that's not being who God created us to be, right? He just wants us to be who we are, who he's made us to be. She brought up Romans 8, verse 6, the mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. I love this. When we're walking in our fleshly desires, in our old self, if you will, there's death, there's not life. But when we're with the Spirit, walking in the Spirit, walking the mindset of the Spirit, then there is a beautiful life and peace, and all because of you're walking with God. So it's so good. Something else about being vulnerable is real is just always better. There's really no other. I mean, you'd rather have the real thing, right? So if you're gonna if you like meat and you are gonna go eat a burger, well, you don't really want to get one of those like veggie burgers. Like, you want an actual burger because you want a burger. You just want the real thing. Not to say that there's anything wrong with veggie burgers, but if you want meat, then you want meat. If you want a burger, you want a burger, you know? And it's just, generally, it's just always going to be better. Another thing that Rose talked about, she said, and I wrote it down, most of the time we are loved and accepted when we are vulnerable. I think personally, For me, when I go and I'm vulnerable with someone, it doesn't need to be this obnoxious, disrespectful vulnerability, but just if I'm sharing with someone, they're often going to just love me and be there for me. And it's actually really, really cool to share yourself with someone. One personal example for me was I recently had a lunch with a friend, and I'm just getting to know her, and I really like her, but I always felt like there was this wall. I didn't feel like I could fully be myself, but she was fully herself with me. And then finally I was like, you know what? I just want to like talk to her about something that's going on in my life. And so I did, and that wall completely went down. It was amazing. It was like actually life changing for our relationship, because I was like, oh, like this is why I didn't feel like I could open up to you, is because there was still a wall there. But once I did that, then that wall was taken down, and there's no like, we're so much closer than we were before. It's amazing. So yeah, so those are the 2 points that Rose spoke on: take on a new way of life and be vulnerable.